Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Swedish on the home side, half American on the away side. Both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel before, albeit the Swedish brewery far more frequently than the American one. But the beer we're looking at is one that I've heard very good things about. It's a style that I know both of these breweries can do very, very well. So I'm quite curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. So yeah, hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, for the home side of things then, we are going to head up towards Stockholm, the Swedish capital, Sundbyberg to be specific. And we're going to have a look at another beer from Omnipollo. So this particular beer is called Monk Magic Dynasty. It comes in at 8.6% ABV, and this is another New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. And it's brewed in collaboration with Monkish Brewing Company, who are from Torrance in Los Angeles over in California on the American West Coast. So yeah, it's been a wee while actually since we've reviewed a beer involving Monkish. I think that was about 2 years ago. And it was thanks to a certain Chris Contreras that I managed to review some Monkish beers. So big shout out to him. I know this is a brewery he loves very much. But yeah, we've done many Omnipollo beers on the channel over the years. And yeah, very experimental, quite interesting brewery from the beery perspective, I have to say. But yeah, curious, as I said, to see what these guys can produce when they knock their heads together. So yeah, let's see what this is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Omnipollo, and the other reviews I've done from Monkish. Hopefully we can add more to both of those lists at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give the channel is hugely appreciated, and you can of course go into the playlist section on the channel homepage and you'll find this beer in both the Swedish playlist and the American playlist because it is dual nationality. But yeah, let's crack on then and get on with the brewery history. So we'll start off with Omnipollo since they are the home brewery in this case. So Omnipollo, as I've told you before, was founded back in 2011 by Henrik Fenty, who is a long-time home brewer, and Carl Grandin, who is a clothing designer. But the two met one day and they discussed it quite in depth. They decided that they wanted to start a brewery because they felt that the Swedish craft beer scene was really insular, but they wanted to reinvigorate it from both a stylistic and a gastronomic sense. And they felt that this partnership between a clothing designer and a home brewer just made sense. And if you look at some of the very early Omnipollo bottle designs and stuff like this, you will see that they have a very kind of unique style. But the name Omnipollo is derived from omnipotent chicken, so omni, pollo being Spanish for chicken, and these guys were gypsy brewers for the most part up until about 2020. Early on, they opened up the Omnipollo's Hat in Stockholm, which is a collaboration bar with Pizza Hut. This became really popular. And the pizza, I have to say, is very good. That is somewhere that I do want to go and film an out and about video. And you will get Omnipollo beers up there that are quite difficult to find elsewhere. But in 2019, they also opened up another bar in Hamburg in Germany, and then another one in Gothenburg, although I believe the Gothenburg one might be closed, and they do now have one in Tokyo in Japan as well, actually. But in March of 2020, they announced that they would open their own brewery at Sundbyberg in a former church, and this had previously housed Sundbyberg's Sjuksbryggeri, and yeah, apparently the brewing capacity there started off at around 100,000 litres of beer per year, but they've scaled it up to be around 600,000 litres of beer per year. A number of their beers are still brewed at the Proefbrouwerij in Lochristenhoeve near Ghent in Belgium. They've also brewed a good few of them at Toul City in Svininge on Sjælland in Denmark as well, and I believe those are the only two breweries that they are still using for the most part, although I know that they've brewed a number of their stouts at Buxton Brewery in England and also at Digges Bryggeri in Landvetter near Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast. So I think they might still be brewing some stuff in these places, but yeah, they are brewing a lot of stuff at their own brewery as well, actually. But yeah, as of September 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 365 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. and like I said too, they are very, very experimental. A couple of the beers that I would recommend you try from these guys, the Fata Morgana, which is you know, an oat cream IPA, I believe they call it, but that was one of the very early Swedish New England IPAs. The Nebuchadnezzar, which is their old school West Coast IPA, that's a lovely, lovely beer. And if you try one of the imperial stouts, such as the Noah, or if you can find it, the Yellow Belly, you know, those are both very, very nice ones. Like, try some of the old school kind of cakey stouts that you used to get from Omnipollo, and you will certainly not be disappointed with those. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Omnipollo for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. Check them out on social media as well, and you can of course go and check out some of my old reviews. But let's go to the American side of things now and have a little look at Monkish Brewing Company. So Monkish, as I mentioned to you earlier, are based in Torrance in Los Angeles in California, over on the American West Coast, and the company was founded by Henry and Adriana Nguyen. So Henry has a PhD in theology, and he taught at Loyola Marymount University, and apparently his interest in beer originates from when he was drinking Belgian beers during his PhD studies in Scotland. Woo! But he apparently started homebrewing in 2007, and he was teaching part-time, but he managed to raise funds from family to start up his own brewery. But the brewery was founded in 2011, but opened in 2012 with a capacity of only 15 barrels and a small tap room on site. But apparently the plan was originally to focus predominantly on sour beer, but they poured all of their money they had into getting the brewery off the ground, so they really couldn't afford the barrels that they would have needed to do this. So in the early days, Adriana worked full-time at Toyota to support their 3 children, while Henry would take their youngest child on deliveries during the day and brew in the middle of the night. But they tried to brew sours a bit later on, and eventually they began to focus on barrel-aged saisons, having gained praise for these, and they had struggled to get acidity from some of their other sour beers apparently as well. But a little bit later on in 2014, once the business had established itself a little bit more, Henry promoted Jennifer Troe from the tasting room to train to be the assistant brewer, and she was apparently very much behind the growth in IPA output from Monkish Brewery. Apparently back in the day they had a no IPA sign in the tap room, so there was a good little bit of a change in the sort of mentality of this brewery. It was all just about saisons and things like this before, but now they're a lot more diversified, to say the least. But over the years, these guys have continued to grow, and they've been driven a lot by Henry's perfectionism. Apparently he's just a walking ball of stress all the time, but over the years they've expanded the brewery and added more employees to the team, and as of September 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 800 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, that is everything I can tell you about Monkish for the moment. They are of course one of the breweries that I would like to go and visit and film an out and about video at in the US. I am still looking into that. I need to decide when I'll go out to the US. Actually, I've got another wedding to go to there in May next year, so fingers crossed we can do something at this point. But yeah, that's Monkish is one of the breweries that I really want to check out. And again, thank you to Chris Contreras for putting me onto these guys and putting them on my radar. But yeah, that's all I can say about them for just now. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. You can check out my old reviews, and you can have a look at the Untappd pages to learn more about all the different beers. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this one then. That's a little bit of a longer brewery history for you because it's a collaboration beer. But as you can see, love kind of quite interesting artwork on this one, I have to say. Black top can. As we said earlier, this one is an 8.6% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA. I believe I paid 64 Swedish kroner for this one, so that's about €6. €6.50, somewhere in the region of like £5.50 sterling, and probably somewhere in the region of $7.50 American for those of you watching in different places. It was released as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortiment through Systembolaget in September of 2022. I forget the exact date, I think it might be in the 16th that this one was released, but yes. This is hopped with Citra, Mosaic and Nelson Sauvin, which we all know quite well. So Citra and Mosaic, both American, both 14% alpha acid. Citra's going to give you that lovely big juicy mango and a nice bit of kind of lemon limey character in a New England IPA. Mosaic is going to give you that lovely kind of juicy tangerine note. Nelson Sauvin, of course, comes from New Zealand. It's a big 16% alpha acid beast, and it gives you that kind of white wine, white green grape, almost slightly gooseberry type flavour normally. It's very distinctive hop, that. But yeah, I think we can get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. 440 millilitre can, a little bit less than an American pint, which is 473 millilitres. But yeah, let's get this guy out and see what we have here. We're very curious about this. That looks nice. That does look very nice, actually. So we've got about 80% of it out the can and into the glass, but that is certainly enough for us to take a look at the beer. So as you can see, this one is poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That is just fading away to be a nice kind of thin foamy layer just now, but it's going to leave a nice ring around the edge of the glass. As you can see, if I bring this beer up to the camera, it is actually a very kind of pale yellow colour, this one. So it is almost akin to like a pure mango juice, but very, very light pale yellow. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour too, but when it comes to New England IPAs, and pretty much any kind of IPA other than fruit IPAs, to be honest, those two variables you don't really have to care about that much. But yeah, nice kind of lovely light pale yellow colour to this one, I have to say. The level of haze on this is pretty impressive, but yeah, you do have to consider that it's 8.6% ABV. Remember, the level of haze depends on the yeast you use, the oak content and the wheat content. There's not really a rule about going up the alcohol scale and it should get hazier, although theoretically that should be the case. It varies from brewery to brewery, and yeah, it can vary from brewery to brewery and even beer to beer, to be honest with you. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But other than that, I don't think we really need to say anything about the appearance of this one. I think it's anything else. I think it's you've had a nice little look at it. So let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see what we have. Oh yeah, that's really nice actually. It's not the most pungent of IPAs that I've come across in recent times, but this one's striking me that it's going to be a bit more oaty and creamy, and kind of juicy and fruity in that sense. The green component takes a bit of a back seat. It has got this nice juicy fruitiness to it, and yeah, lovely just kind of creaminess on the malt base. So as I've said, I think there are 6 directions a New England IPA can go. They can be farmhousey and yeasty, rye lean and grainy, wheaty bitey, oaty creamy, sort of barley malt bready, or they can be a little bit sweet, and quite often they will show you a few of these characteristics. But I've got a feeling this one is going to be more of a kind of oaty creamy one, but it might surprise us with a little bit of wheaty bitiness, because I get the feeling that there's some wheat in here just thickening it out. But yeah, okay, so let's break this down for you then. So there's a nice little bit of a kind of fresh. There's a nice little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you get some fluffy. You do get some nice kind of fluffy white bread in it, which I do like. And that's the barley malt, of course. But at the back of the nose, there is just something that's telling me there's a little touch of wheaty bitiness in there. But otherwise, I'm pretty sure this is going to give us, when we taste it, a good bit of wheaty bitiness, or I'm going to detect the wheat in this. What I'll also say about this one is that it's not overly sweet. There's not such a big brown sugary component to it, like Werther's Original or something like this. This one is a little bit more kind of this one does strike me as being a little bit more kind of creamy and things. It actually reminds me a little bit of Fata Morgana, to be honest with you. But yeah, so a little bit of fresh bread crust. You can smell a sort of soft white bready layer in there, a little bit of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose, good little bit of oaty creaminess in there. And I think this beer is fairly fresh because the oats remain quite creamy. You do get a little tiny touch of dryness out of them though, so maybe it's about 5-6 weeks old, or been in the can 5-6 weeks, I should say. And yeah, maybe there's just a little bit of kind of Werther's Original in this one, just a tiny little bit, but at 8.6% ABV, that kind of makes sense. I always felt back in the day that if you went above 8.5% in New England, you needed a little bit of like caramel or something like that, just to give you that wee bit of sweetness to cover the booze. But yeah, I think there's not much else to say about the malty side of things with this one. Quite bready, quite creamy, A little bit of bread crust, maybe a teeny touch of cracker. But yeah, it looks, it smells very good, I should say, and it does look good as well. So on the green component, like I say, the green component doesn't strike me as being overly pungent in this one. So I think this is mainly going to be a late edition and dry hopped one. Remember, 3 types of hopping. Early edition hops in the first hour of the wort boil gives you all your bitterness. West Coast IPAs use a lot of that. New England IPAs not as much. Late edition hopping in the last half hour of wort boil, a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma. Then dry hopping after the wort boil is all about flavour and aroma. New England IPAs rely on the latter two. West Coast IPAs have all 3. But with this one, the green component takes a bit of a back seat, as I say, so I think this is mainly late edition and dry hopping. You don't get quite the same pungency, I think, if you only do dry hopping and late edition hopping. But yeah, it is pretty damn nice, this one, in that sense. So yeah, a little bit of earthiness, I suspect, from the mosaic, just tiny little bit. Mainly it's quite grassy, and it's quite a wet grassiness and fresh grassiness that you get from this one. So yeah, nice kind of fresh, wet grassiness. Yeah, nice, fresh, wet grassiness for sure, and I think that sums up the green component. I'm not getting that much in the way of floral character out of this one, which is surprising. But on the fruity side of things then, you can definitely smell that the Nelson Sauvin is forming the backbone of this one. So yeah, lovely Nelson Sauvin, smooth backbone to the beer. I get a good bit of like soft mango and soft, there's a little touch of an almost kind of pineapple-y and papaya note to this beer. There's a little bit of the tangerine orange from the mosaic, but I think the Nelson Sauvin I think dominates the fruity aromas for me. You get that Nelson Sauvin backbone, a little bit of mango, a little bit of kind of papaya, apricot sort of stuff, as I say, maybe a bit of pineapple, but then yeah, the tangerine for me, the mosaic takes a bit of a back seat in this one, but we'll see if it comes out in the actual the flavour then. So we'll get the rest of this guy into the glass. As I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But we're going to taste this now. So yeah, this one is Monk Magic Dynasty, coming in New England Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Omnipollo in Stockholm and Monkish in Torrance in Los Angeles in California. Let's get stuck in. Sláinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that beer, that New England IPA is a very, I think this is quite fresh. You can still feel some of the green, some of the you can get some of the green from the hops in this one actually. You still get a little bit of that just on the side. You can feel some of the dry hopping, the dustiness, as I always used to call it. But this is actually, I'm surprised with this. Because I just suspected it was going to give you a little bit of wheaty brightness. This is a big oaty, creamy thing, this actually. It's like this is one of these kind of beers that's very much, the mouthfeel and everything is pretty much like fruit juice. It's one of the smoothest IPAs, and I actually find this one quite light as well. It's not the thickest and creamiest of things. It's actually quite clean, quite silky, with a bit of creaminess to back it up. That's interesting, but I'm going to say thumbs up to both Omnipollo and Monkish for this one. I can't remember exactly how the mouthfeel was on the Monkish beers that I had 2 years ago, but they were very, very good, I'll say that. But yeah, that gets a thumbs up from me. This is a really enjoyable beer. It's really just nice and creamy, but for an 8.6%, it's dangerously easy to drink that. You could easily have a few of these. I don't drink beer in such big volumes these days, other than I do enjoy a nice lager, a nice big stein of lager after I've finished my shifts at the pub. But yeah, this is dangerously easy to drink. Yeah, I do like this. I like this one for sure. Yeah, so where do we start with this one? Let's break it down then, as we always do. So middle third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of that kind of, you get a little bit of that fresh bread, white bready bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. On top of that, yeah, on top of that, you can feel that there's a nice kind of smooth white bready character to the beer. It's a little bit barley malty, but yeah, you can feel there is a bit of wheat coming out of that as well, but not too much actually, because the bready layer would be a lot taller. I think it would feel a lot kind of taller and more dense. Otherwise, if there was a bit more wheat in this one, I think this is mainly a kind of oaty leaning IPA. It almost reminds me of like an oat cream IPA in some ways. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so a little bit of bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. The malt base incidentally is actually quite straight shooting. It's very straightforward, but it works. It really works very nicely. So yeah, on top of that, as I say, a little bit of yeah, so bread crust, soft kind of fluffy white bread in there. Then you've got a little bit. You do get a little bit of an almost Jacob's cream crackery note the further you go into the aftertaste. But then on top of that, yeah, on top of that, you have a nice kind of oaty. You have that nice big oaty creamy layer coming out of this one, and it does. And if you go down the middle line of your tongue, you get a little bit of that almost kind of porridgey thing. But yeah, it is very creamy and smooth, and that tells you this beer is pretty fresh. I'm trying to figure out if it does have a little bit of a sweet component to it, just a little bit of brown sugar, but I don't think it does. Maybe in the centre of your palate you'll get just a little teeny hint of like a Werther's Original sort of thing, but I think that's just the alcohol itself rather than there being a little bit, carapils or, carahel or something like that, golden promise in there just to give you a wee bit of sweetness. But I think it is very, very nice from the New England IPA perspective. It's a lovely, lovely beer for sure. Mm. But yeah, lovely, as I say, a little bit of kind of almost porridgey oaty thing as you go down the middle line of the palate, but as you move further out toward the edge of your tongue, yeah, you get lots of lovely kind of creamy notes coming out of this beer. But yeah, as I say, it gets a big thumbs up from me in that regard. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say about the malt base there. If you go to the back third of the palate, then you get a little bit of a kind of you can see the fresh bread crusty notes, and the base just get a little bit drier. On top of that, you can feel the fluffy white bread layer is a little bit taller, and you do actually, on top of that kind of barley malt fluffy layer, there is a little bit of a kind of bitey, wheaty character for sure. You do get a little bit of that coming out of this one. So yeah, that is quite interesting for sure. But then on top of that, you get some of the more kind of yeasty notes coming out of the beer on top of the wheat, and it's like a very airy, very light white bread. Just a little hint of that almost farmhousey, woody character on the very back of the palate. But yeah, the further you go into the aftertaste, I think you do get that little bit of wheaty bitiness coming out of the beer actually. But yeah, middle third of the palate is definitely oaty and creamy. Back third of the palate, the most pungent flavour is the more kind of wheaty, bitey sort of thing. So yeah, back third of the palate, the flavour is slightly taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down and squashes together. But as I say, it works. It works very, very nicely. Yeah, let's look at the hoppy side of the beer then. Green component of this one, it does have a bit more pungency to it than the aroma would have you believe, but again, it's still quite nice. Back corners of the palate, you've got that lovely little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it has a little bit of herbal character, right enough, and the earthiness, of course, comes from the mosaic. But then, yeah, as you move further forward in this one, you do get a bit of the dustiness. You get a bit of that kind of dry hoppingy dustiness out of this beer, which I do enjoy. So as you reach the front corners of the palate, definitely a little touch floral. Round the front curve of the palate, it's lighter and grassy. And yeah, I do quite like that as well. So a bit of a lighter grassiness around the front of the palate. So yeah, a little bit of floral note, a little bit of oily grassiness there, and a little bit of zestiness too. So yeah, I quite like that. I do quite like how that goes together. Yeah, green component is nice and a wee bit. It's not overly bitter, this one, but yeah, you get a wee bit more pungency to it than the aroma would have you believe. Let's focus on the front third of the palate and the fruitiness of the beer then. Yeah. So, Brain's not working. So, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. You get a little bit of bready build up there, but the base of the front third of the palate is soft white bread with a little bit of oaty smoothness on top of it. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer, and I like that. So toward the back of that front third of your palate, the Citra I think actually does play quite a big role in the beer. And it's interesting how Nelson Sauvin dominated the aroma, but it's a bit more balanced in the actual flavour of the beer. So yeah, toward the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit of that stronger grapefruit in there. And the grapefruit, the pungency of the grapefruit actually does linger a little bit. But yeah, as you move further forward from that, you get a little touch of passion fruit, and then the juicy mango and the sort of soft apricot and things underneath it. But then as you move toward the front half, the front half of that front third of your palate, there's a nice you do get that nice kind of white green grapey gooseberry thing from that you expect of Nelson Sauvin. It's got that nice oily character to it at the front. As I say, I don't get toward the back of that front half, sort of in the middle of the front third of your palate with this one, and then a bit more further forward as you go into the aftertaste. I think the Mosaic takes a little bit of time to show itself in this beer for me. The sort of orangey tangerine notes from the Mosaic take a little bit of time to show themselves for me. But yeah, Nelson Sauvin is definitely the kind of anchor of the fruits. The Mosaic comes out a little bit later, but the Citra is the most kind of pungent of them, if you like. And Citra, I should say, isn't really showing its kind of lemon-limey character that it can have in this beer for me. It's more showing its kind of pungent tropical side, which is quite interesting. And it just goes to show you hops can behave differently depending on what malt base and what yeast you put them with. But again, this is very, very nice. Yeah, like I say, this gets a big thumbs up for me. It's one of these kind of oaty, creamy IPAs. It kind of reminds me of it really does remind me of the Fata Morgana, actually. I think that's fair to say. But yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah, not surprised with, both breweries are very capable. I think that's fair to say. But yeah, let's round off this one with a wee look at the mouthfeel, but we've talked about that throughout the video, to be honest. So yeah, like I say, this is one of these beers that's dangerously drinkable, I should say. Can't speak English these days. Lovely kind of silkiness to it. It has got a wee bit of creaminess and a good little bit of wetness to it as well. But yeah, everything goes together in this. Very, very nicely. And as I say, it gets a thumbs up from me in that sense. In terms of IBUs, it's a little bit difficult to place, to be honest with you. You've got this dustiness to it from the dry hopping because it is so fresh. So yeah, you've got a little bit of that. And that gives you the impression IBUs. So I'd say it's maybe about 50 IBUs, 40 or 50 IBUs. It feels a little bit more bitter because it's got a little bit of that kind of, it does have a wee bit of the hop burn, a wee bit of the kind of sort of dustiness, if you like, from the dry hopping. But I quite like it. I do like these beers to have a little bit more kind of bitterness. And yeah, the malt base, as we said, is very smooth and very creamy, a little bit of wheaty bitiness in there, not sweet. 50 out of 40, I'd say 50 IBUs, that seems a bit more with this one. And then you've got that lovely juicy fruity note there. We've described the fruits quite in depth just a second ago, but yeah, the fruity notes are kind of soft and juicy for me. But yeah, I've enjoyed this one. I thought this was a very, very nice New England double. So, as I say, it gets a thumbs up from me. So, yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So, yeah, this was the Monk Magic Dynasty, a collaboration IPA between Omnipollo in Stockholm and Monkish Brewing in Torrance in Los Angeles in California in the US. Yeah, lovely big oaty creamy New England IPA, this one. So let's leave it. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are, both from Omnipollo and from Monkish. Do give me some other brewery recommendations. It's always nice to hear what breweries I should be checking out. But thanks again for watching. Check out my social media, check out the brewery's social media, and we'll catch you in another review. Sláinte, skål, and cheers.